Did you know there was once a Formula One driver that was kidnapped the night before a Grand Prix? Let's talk about Juan Manuel Fangio and the 1958 Cuban Grand Prix. Disclaimer: while there will be mention of Fulgencio Batista and Fidel Castro in the 1959 Cuban Revolution, I have broken this part of history down to the parts that are relevant to Fangio's kidnapping, as I don't believe that I'm the right person to tell Cuba's entire political history. So with that being said, as we know, Formula One is no stranger to political unrest, and they have faced some rightful criticism on the countries that they have chosen to race in the past and in the present. One specific political controversy that I want to talk about in this series is the 1958 kidnapping of Juan Manuel Fangio. The first ever Cuban Grand Prix was held in 1957 while Cuba was still under the dictatorship of President Batista, but on the brink of the 1959 Cuban Revolution, President Batista at this point was riddled with corruption and a vision to attract the ultra-wealthy into the country's casinos. He had the grand idea of organizing a Formula One race to bring in the ultra-wealthy to the country. The 1957 Cuban Grand Prix went well, and Fangio was crowned the victor of that race. However, please keep in mind that at this point, Cuba was in a state of escalating civil unrest and conflict. So when we fast forward to the 1958 Grand Prix, you have to ask, should it have happened? The goal of Fangio's kidnapping by Castro's revolutionaries was to show the world that they were serious about the revolution and to bring international embarrassment to President Fulgencio Batista, and of course, kidnapping a five-time WDC would do that. So on the evening before the Grand Prix at Hotel Lincoln, Fangio at the lobby was kidnapped at gunpoint. And while news of his kidnapping was widespread and it was an international conflict, Fangio himself was calm. Fangio was moved to 3 unknown locations during this time, and according to Arnal Rodriguez, one of Fangio's kidnappers, they had prepared food for him and let him rest. And admittedly, Fangio sympathized with his captors when they advised him of their cause and they apologized for the kidnapping. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, the following morning, Batista insisted that the race continue on, and this race on its own had a tragic ending. A local Cuban driver on lap 6 in an oil patch, he lost control of his Ferrari and went on to crash into a spectator area where tragically lives were lost. At this point, Fangio was still with the kidnappers and they were negotiating Fangio's release with the Argentine ambassador, and through these negotiations there were fears that Fangio could get caught in the crossfire with the police if he was released at the embassy. So the Argentine ambassador agreed to meet with them near his residence with no police to ensure safety. So what happened next? Well, most people would think that a person who has been kidnapped would hold a grudge against their captors, but that was not the story for Juan Manuel Fangio. He actually made it clear that he would not identify the perpetrators if questioned, and in fact, he befriended some of them. This entire Grand Prix overall was a disaster marked by political unrest, abduction, and the tragedy of the race, which is what makes it so controversial. So there you have it, a very simplistic version of one of Formula One's most controversial moments, and like I said before, should this Grand Prix have happened? I think it's safe to say that no, it should not have.